global commodity markets are once again experiencing significant volatility, directly linked to unexpected shifts in Iran's geopolitical and economic posture. Just days ago, a fragile temporary ceasefire in the US-Iran conflict unraveled, sparking new military actions and a swift reversal of oil sanctions waivers. This sudden escalation directly impacts global oil supply and prices. The immediate catalyst was renewed attacks on commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz on July 7, 2026. These incidents, including strikes on a Qatari LNG tanker and a Saudi-flagged crude oil tanker, prompted the U.S. to retaliate with strikes on Iranian air defense systems and other targets. These actions effectively ended a temporary sanctions waiver on Iranian oil sales. The U.S. Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, had previously issued General License X in June 2026, temporarily allowing the production, delivery, and sale of Iranian-origin crude oil. This license, part of a Memorandum of Understanding to End the Iran War, had offered a brief window for Iranian oil to re-enter global trade, easing supply concerns. However, on July 7, 2026, OFAC revoked General License X, replacing it with a narrower wind-down authorization, General License X1. This new license explicitly prohibits any new transactions involving Iranian crude or petroleum products after July 7, 2026, forcing a rapid cessation of new purchases and loadings. The market's expectation of increased Iranian supply vanished overnight, directly contributing to a sharp rise in crude oil prices. Brent crude jumped over 9% since Monday, reaching nearly $79 per barrel, while U.S. crude also surged. This underscores the market's sensitivity to even temporary changes in Iran's oil export status. The Strait of Hormuz, a critical maritime choke point, remains central to this volatility. Roughly 1/5 of the world's seaborne oil trade and 20% of global liquefied natural gas, LNG, normally passes through this narrow waterway. Disruptions here have immediate and profound global repercussions. Since February 28, 2026, when the US and Israel launched an air war against Iran, Iran has largely blocked shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. This blockade severely impacted global oil and LNG supplies, with tanker traffic dropping significantly and thousands of mariners becoming stranded. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, issued warnings, boarded merchant ships, and laid sea mines in retaliation for military strikes. Although a temporary ceasefire in June led to a partial reopening and some oil exports, fresh attacks have again heightened the security threat to severe. Prior to the recent revocation, Iran had shipped approximately 60 million barrels of crude since the U.S. naval blockade was paused in mid-June. This brief surge highlighted Iran's capacity to quickly re-enter the market when restrictions ease, demonstrating the substantial volume of crude oil it holds in floating storage. The International Monetary Fund (IMF) recently downgraded its global economic growth forecasts for 2026 to a sluggish 3%, citing the energy shock caused by the Iran war. Oil prices are now expected to rise nearly 32% this year, contributing to an acceleration in global consumer inflation to 4.7%. Meanwhile, OPEC+ nations have been attempting to stabilize the market. 7 members, including Saudi Arabia and Russia, agreed to increase their collective oil production quotas by 188,000 barrels per day starting in August 2026. However, these increases have been largely theoretical due to the Hormuz blockade and disruptions. The effectiveness of OPEC+ output hikes remains limited by the ongoing conflict. While these increases signal an intent to normalize supply, the physical reality of obstructed shipping lanes and elevated geopolitical risks impede their immediate impact on global crude flows. Beyond oil, Iran's nuclear program continues to be a source of international concern and market uncertainty. New satellite imagery indicates Iran is continuing construction at the deeply buried nuclear facility known as Pickaxe Mountain. Western intelligence suspects this site may be an undeclared uranium enrichment plant. This activity violates the June 17 U.S.-Iran Memorandum of Understanding, which committed Tehran to maintaining the current status quo of its nuclear program. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IEA, remains largely unable to verify Iran's safeguards agreement or its nuclear commitments due to restricted access. The broader geopolitical landscape further complicates the market picture. Iran is actively seeking closer strategic cooperation with Russia, particularly in economic, trade, energy, and transport sectors. This growing alignment provides Iran with alternative avenues for trade and diplomatic support. China, a major buyer of Iranian oil, finds itself in a precarious balancing act, exposed to disruptions in Gulf energy flows. While it has sought alternative suppliers, Iran's control over the Strait offers Beijing discounted energy resources, creating a complex interdependent relationship. The disruption in energy supply exacerbates existing vulnerabilities in global markets. Even before the Iran conflict, Russia's energy sector struggled, but it has now emerged as an unlikely safety valve for some markets due to massive supply shortages elsewhere. The prolonged conflict also increases the risk of broader economic fragmentation, moving towards competing energy blocs rather than a unified global energy market. This geopolitical realignment influences investment decisions and long-term supply strategies worldwide. The events surrounding the Strait of Hormuz in 2026 have demonstrated how a single narrow waterway can profoundly influence the entire world economy. The disruption highlights the fragile balance of global supply chains and the pervasive impact of geopolitical tensions. Ultimately, Iran's capacity to move global markets stems from its critical role in energy geopolitics and its willingness to exert leverage over vital shipping lanes. Until a stable resolution emerges, market volatility tied to Iran's actions will likely persist.